You're still watching The Pulse with me, Gifty and Dopia. It's time for us to learn a bit about Europe. Now, 27 years ago, to demonstrates that there is strength in unity. Today, Germany is one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and the role of that act of unity they took 27 years ago cannot be overemphasized. Let's go over to DW, our partners in Germany, where Rupert Woodward is standing by. Hello, Rupert. Thank you very much joining us for the first time. Let me just go straight forward and ask you about to give us a bit of a background to those of our viewers who don't really follow European history. Bring us up to speed with a bit of a background.
Yes, when in 1990 the two Germanys were unified, there was a free democratic West Germany with a very successful free market economy going together with an East Germany which had been under communist rule for more than 40 years, a dictatorship, and it had a ruined economy which was not at all competitive. Today, 27 years later, you can't really spot the difference if you visit cities like Dresden, Jena or Leipzig in East Germany, all of them thriving with activity, new infrastructure and very modern industries. And East German politicians have made it all to the top. Chancellor Angela Merkel, for instance, and former federal president Joachim Gauck, both are from the former East. But this all came at a cost. The restructuring of the East German economy meant the downfall of many East German companies. Millions of people lost their jobs in the beginning. Unemployment rates went up to 50% in some regions, especially many middle-aged people then never found employment again. And there still is much catching up to do. If we look at the gross domestic product, for instance, the economy in the East only reaches 2/3 of the strength of the West economy. Unemployment rates are sinking, but not as much as in the West. And the ones that do have work earn lesser than they would in the West. That has led to a mass migration within the former two Germanys from the East into the West. The East has lost over years 15% of its population, around about 2.2 million people.
Oh. Wow. Well, let's now look at celebrating the past. Of course, that's what Germans are doing today. But let's look at that with respect to the election results. How do we reconcile the two?
Well, the election result, of course, is in the focus right now because especially the East has voted differently from the West. There are many now who blame the East for the rise of the far-right populist party Alternative for Germany, an anti-refugee and anti-Muslim party. And at first glance, one could get this impression. It is the East where the populist party AfD has its strongholds, in some regions even coming in first before Angela Merkel's conservative CDU party. And also in the past, the East was prone to right-wing votes. But at all, this doesn't mean that the East alone made it for the far-right AfD. The sheer number of voters who voted for the far-right is much bigger in the West than in the East. There's one thing that unites the East and West voters. A large minority chose to vote for a far-right party which is loudly outspoken against Merkel's refugee policy, against open society and against progressive policies like gender equality or gay marriage. They chose the far-right option out of protest. And this puts issues back on the agenda that have not been debated for too long. The growing gap between the well-off and the poor, the differences between thriving cities like Berlin, Hamburg or Munich and the poor rural regions, especially in the East. And above all, the unsolved problems that are linked to the migration issue. How many immigrants should be allowed into Germany? How are they going to be integrated properly? It was quite a remarkable speech yesterday that we've seen from German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, where he addressed all these problems.
And we're going to go into that so we can wrap up this conversation. And that issue of migration has been a very thorny one. So it's interesting that the ceremonial president of Germany spoke about that in that speech that was supposed to commemorate this day. Tell us a bit more about what he said, and then we can end it there.
Yes, Frank-Walter Steinmeier said that Germany needs to honestly define what kind of migration is needed and wanted, and how could this be achieved. This country still does not have an overall immigration law. He called out for such a law because many, especially from Africa or the Middle East or even Southeastern Europe, try to enter Germany using the asylum laws, although they do not apply for people who want to go to Germany to find a better future economically. So this all comes with all the problems we have seen in the past. People undertaking huge risks traveling to Europe, an overburdened administration here in Germany, and frustrated migrants who are denied asylum after all and get stranded somewhere as illegal aliens. An immigration act with clear quotas could help and lift some pressure from all sides. But the question here is if the political parties are going to follow the president, who's only a ceremonial president. Especially Angela Merkel, CDU and CSU parties, they have opposed such a migration law for very many years now.
Oh, wow. Well, we'll see how it goes. But in the meantime, you'd say that the celebration has kicked off well. Everybody is excited, happy?
Well, yes, of course. This is a day of joy in the end, of course. The celebrations, most of them took part yesterday. The 3rd of October is the national holiday here in Germany. And of course, people are always very excited about this. Many commemorate and think of what has happened 27 years ago. But there still is this huge shock of the election result only about 1 week ago.
Well, Germans, they're still trying to look at how far they have come as a nation 27 years ago when they decided to come together. Rupert, thank you so much for your time. Rupert Widoward is political correspondent with our partner DW in Germany, bringing us up to speed. Of course, stepping in also for regular Thomas Sparrow. You start watching The Pulse with me, Gifty and Orpia.